Hey everyone, my name is Jeff Ojeda and I'm the owner and manager at Phase Management in Vancouver, BC. I'm grateful to be operating business on the unceded lands of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam people. I've been in the music industry for just over 15 years with experience from various sides. I've had the privilege of working with the world's biggest artists, labels, and managers, and I'm here to share my knowledge with you today. Thank you for joining my Jumpstart Foundations class. Now let's get started. In today's lesson, we're going to be covering everything from identifying your audience to social media strategy. We'll touch on best practices for your releases, the essence of music marketing, and how everything is interconnected. The core of any successful marketing effort in the digital world comes down to email marketing and managing your converted fans or fan database. So what does a converted fan mean? A converted fan is someone that is interested enough in your content to the point that they follow you, engage with you, but most importantly, they become a subscriber to your mailing list. It's important to understand that social media platforms are simply just tools and shouldn't always just be the end goal. They are a point of context that help introduce fans to you so you can lead them back into your world and eventually, hopefully, convert them as mailing list subscribers. Social media entities own this information that you spend time and energy acquiring. So it is critical that artists realize this and they do everything that they can to ensure they're building a database that is proprietary to their business. So in summary, your fan base or mailing list database should be the destination for your fans, while social media accounts are just the vehicle to get them there. Every successful online business begins with a well-managed customer database. Email marketing is the #1 most effective way to generate sales and to keep fans engaged. If done right, this means increased tour and ticket sales and revenues from merchandise sales. Now let's talk about defining your audience and understanding what tools are right for the job. There are a few key metrics to look out for that really help you learn about who your audience is, where they come from, how they identify, and what interests they have. Every platform provides different versions and different variations of these metrics, so it's important that we understand the essentials ahead of digging into this data. Thankfully, there's a lot of information available on most platforms and their administrative dashboards, and it helps us make better educated decisions around our releases. An audience can be defined by identifying a few key factors: age, location, interests, gender identity, and culture. Now, while all this information is relatively accessible, what's most important is understanding how to read data relationships between these platforms. What I often recommend is for everyone to zoom out, take an objective view of your data from sources such as Facebook, Spotify, Instagram, Apple Music, and compare two main things. Where does the data overlap between the trends? And where are there particular consistencies on those platforms? Recognizing and comparing graph trends is what provides clarity as to who your audience is, what they like to consume, how and where they like to consume it. Comparison between platforms is the key to developing a content strategy that feeds the needs and expectations of your audience. Every platform will likely have different audiences as consumption methods vary between age, location, accessibility, and so on. For example, Facebook will likely have a more mature audience than a platform like, say, TikTok. In terms of how this works in application, defining and understanding your current audience and measuring this by finding comparable trends in the data is what's called your core audience. When approaching things like deploying social advertising campaigns, it's critical to do this work ahead of time so that you can base your decisions off of the information collected and not just intuition. You can then use these metrics from your core audience as your custom audience and spend on advertisements to people that are much more likely to engage with your ads. This is essentially lead generation. So you want to make sure you know where to focus your scope and then go after potential fans that are more likely to convert. Social Media 101. My biggest piece of advice with managing any social media profile is to understand that they're all just tools to help you deliver content in the end. Every social media platform demands different styles of content. For example, Twitter is driven by short captions, hashtags, and real-time frequency, while something like Instagram is driven by videos, photos, engagements, like likes and comments, stories, and reels. They're all very different. So something as simple as spending time on a platform will allow you to understand what styles of content work and how you can build new ideas into your content strategies. Most platforms now have stories and in-feed content, and the way that I like to approach those is by thinking macro versus micro. Posting something to your story, for an example, would be micro content because it's fleeting by nature and only lasts 24 hours, whereas an in-feed post is more permanent and stays on your profile as long as you allow it to. So I employ you to see your content in two parts going forward, macro and micro. Another important aspect to succeeding on social media platforms is dependent on how well you utilize the tools provided. On Instagram Stories, for an example, they provide you with questions, polls, music, and other features that are engaging to your viewers. So it's imperative that you're using these tools provided, especially when new ones present themselves. If we are to use Instagram as the example again, the response to TikTok was to create Reels. When Reels first became usable for the public, the algorithm was very open and it was much easier to have your content go viral. Now the space is much more saturated, and while the opportunity still exists, it's just much harder to come by. Remember that the mechanism that generates activity on any social platform is called an algorithm. The key wording there is that it is inherently a rhythm, or even further deconstructed, it is the intersection of activity and frequency. Activity being publishing posts, engaging with others, commenting, messaging, and so on. Frequency obviously being at what rate are you posting and how consistent are you with your engagement. Social media is an opportunity to enrich your fans' knowledge of who you are with the content that builds personality and trust with that fan. They already know you're a musician, so keep that content between maybe 20 to say 50% at the most. Too many call to actions can spoil a relationship between an artist and a fan, so be very calculated when using those. Really focus on what your fans respond to and prioritize that content for all of your future releases. As a Canadian artist, it is essential to understand the grant funding environments and their deadlines and requirements. In most cases, the minimum eligibility requirement for any music product is 6 songs, or an EP. So if applying for grant funding is in your plans, make sure you're prepared to put out at least 6 songs under one product within that year. Since we live in a singles-driven market, it's also important to maximize the amount of single releases or moments possible for any EP or album. This affords you more talking points throughout the year. Laying out single releases is also an opportunity to financially recuperate costs of recording by giving each song a chance at playlist support. Also, make sure all of your music and the production of your music are at least comprised of 50% Canadian talent and writership. I always look at my release strategy like building a set list. You don't want to play all your hits right off the bat, and you want it to be dynamic. So take your fans on a bit of a journey with the rollout of your releases and have fun with it. Another tip, before you make plans to release anything, share your music with trusted music industry allies. Try to take in as much constructive feedback as possible, make an honest assessment of the feedback yourself, and to see if there could be room for improvement. I see a lot of artists rushing the A&R process by being overexcited, and it usually never pans out well. Never rush a release, and always make sure to remember the #1 rule is make the music great before anything else. Because good quality music wins, and it just takes you further. For every single I release, I use a framework of about 3 months to make sure I'm covering all of my bases with that release. First month, content creation. That means single art, photos, lyric sheet, social media content, a one-sheet, lyric video. Essentially any content you're going to be using to either tease the track or to promote it after it's been released. Second month, registration and distribution submission. Create a private SoundCloud link, generate your ISRC code through connectmusic.ca if you don't already have one, register with SOCAN and SoundExchange, and then finally, upload your masters to your preferred distribution aggregator, being TuneCore, CD Baby, AWOL, whoever you use. Third month, pitching and deploying your release. So use that private streaming link to share the music with curators, music industry bloggers, Music BC, any other relevant media outlets that you feel your music should be on. As you approach release day, you should tease the song or be deploying some sort of planned reveal on social media to make it a moment. Give yourself at least 6 weeks, maybe more, for your song to hit distribution and make it into retail stores like Spotify and Apple. This way you're not running the risk of having your releases held at streaming services in case your song is audited. Plus, this way you give your music some time in the system of the retailers like Spotify and Apple and potentially have them support your release through their editorial programs. The first month is one of the most important, as creating a content bank helps alleviate the pressure to create content on the spot. It allows you to post and take days off to focus on being creative and not let yourself be trapped by the demand of the many platforms we use. Planning ahead creates sustainable habits for mental well-being. They're essential. Another important tip is to make sure you stay on top of keeping your digital and social profiles updated. Make sure you're refreshing the imagery for every release and have a plan for how you want to reveal the announcement of each new single. Every platform will require different information to be updated, so become familiar on what those are and create a checklist for yourself. This will make every release easier, as you'll know exactly what to expect and what's needed for a successful campaign. When we're talking about what music marketing is, I always use the analogy of fishing. Imagine you're in a boat, fishing. You're over a body of water with a variety of life forms beneath you that also have varying appetites. Think of potential fans this way, and your job is to figure out what bait is best, or essentially what your audience wants. And from there, your focus becomes more clear and you can confidently cast that line and start reeling fish in. What I'm saying is, define your audience, make music and media that they crave, deliver it to them through their preferred platforms, and then start converting fans. The foundation of every great marketing plan starts with identifying the goals for the year ahead. The reality of being an artist is there's an expectation to put music out in order to stay current. There's unfortunately nothing overly exciting about that. But if you can position music releases around specific goals and moments, you create more excitement around the release and build a story around each moment. These targets could be award nominations, festival dates, showcases at conferences, or any other great event, anything that's a good look for your career. So give yourself at least 1 month of time ahead of any campaign to make sure you have a well thought out strategy and concretely know how you're going to deploy it. The saying goes, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And that is very much the case with release strategy. Think about each song, the intention behind it, and how it connects you with the world, and find ways to amplify that. Use data and metrics to better your decision making. For example, if a song isn't performing very well, perhaps spending money on going to radio, filming a music video, doesn't really make sense. But if a song is doing well, then these things can act as exponential gains for the release and can help continue your story. Make educated decisions on your spending and let data justify these decisions. At the moment, it seems the streaming services share data in 28-day increments, which indicates that's how frequently they like to see music releases coming in. My recommendation is space your music out 4 to 6 weeks from each release so that you're able to take the residual success from release 1 and add it to release 2. This method is called data stacking, and it's how you generate momentum on streaming platforms. There's no right way to do this. Do what you like, but also consider the benefits of tight release dates next time you approach building your release plans. So I often get asked, what is the best way to speak to your audience in an on-brand fashion? Well, my best tip of advice would be to just be consistent in whatever language and tone you choose to speak to your audience with. In terms of style of content, if you are a brand that wants to keep a very close grip and tight sort of aesthetic, then ideally choose a color palette, textures, and other subjects that will become visual brand ID components. Those will improve your consistency. It's important not to be overly political or opinionated. The truth is, music fans love to learn about artists, their stories, their lives, because truthfully, it's an escape. People attend live music events to escape. And I personally find the best brands are the ones that provide an element of escape or getting lost in something. Try to create at least one video asset for each release. You can explore many options, but as long as you are doing something for YouTube, IGTV, Facebook, you're going to see a lot more success out of your efforts. High budget is not always necessary, so find ways to create content creatively and work within a realistic budget. So to recap today, take inventory of your current audience metrics, compare them between platforms, and learn about the similarities and differences between the information. Use the demographic metrics on social platforms to help influence your advertising and marketing strategies whenever possible. Spend time understanding the nuances to each social media account. Spend your time on the ones that your audiences actively use. Create content for social platforms and organize them according to macro content and micro content. So find what should live for a short period of time and what should live semi-permanently, and create with those applications in mind. Make sure your products are composed of at least 6 songs. If you're going after funding, and at least 50% of the credits must be Canadian derived. Give yourself 3 months of lead time ahead of any single release to properly prepare your assets. And remember, month 1 is all about content creation. Month 2 is registration and distribution submission, while month 3 is all about pitching and deploying your release. Set your goals for the year before setting up any music release plans. Make the potential success of your goals create leverage and opportunity for your music. Be consistent with the language, content, and style of creative material you put on your social media accounts. Now, let's apply your learning. Take a screenshot from all of your social and streaming admin platforms for the same metric. For example, if you're comparing age, make sure the reporting is consistent and say 28-day increments across all platforms, and then compare them. Find the similarities in the graph trends, where they overlap and where they might differ. For your next music release, build a 3-month plan. Be articulate and spell out all of the creative assets you want to have to support the release and what platforms are the most appropriate for the rollout. Plan a 12-month release strategy for an upcoming EP or album. And finally, get creative with when and why you're releasing these songs. Thank you for joining me on today's Jumpstart Foundations lesson. Good luck with your music releases.